Look at these two animals standing side by side. One of them has a back that rises into a huge, sloping mountain of muscle above the shoulders. The other has a back that runs almost flat from the neck all the way to the tail. Most people glance at both of them, see two enormous horned creatures built like living trucks, and call them the same thing. In North America, people have been calling one of them a buffalo for centuries, even though it is not a buffalo at all. And here is the part that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. That famous hump on the bison's shoulders is not a fat reserve. It is not a storage tank for lean winters. It is not a camel-style water supply. And it is not simply a thick pile of shaggy hair sitting on the animal's back. It is something far more interesting. And once you understand what is actually underneath that fur, you will never mistake these animals for each other again. Over the next few minutes, we are going to open up that hump and look at the bones and the muscle inside it. Then we will look at the fur, then the horns, and finally we will put all of it together into one simple method that works even from a distance, even in bad light, even on a blurry photograph. Dear viewers, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel with the bell. And now, let us continue. So let us start with the hump, because it is the single most reliable feature on the entire animal, and it is the one that almost everyone misunderstands. From the outside, what you see is a body that is dramatically taller at the front than at the back. The highest point of the bison is not the middle of the spine, and it is not the hips. It is right there above the front legs. From that peak, the top line slopes down in a long, continuous line toward the tail, so the whole animal looks like it is permanently walking downhill. Now let us take the fur off and look at the skeleton. Running along the spine of every mammal is a row of bony projections that stick upward from each vertebra. They are called spinous processes, and in most animals they are short little ridges. In the bison, the spinous processes of the chest vertebra are enormously elongated. They rise up like a row of vertical bony spikes, tallest right behind the neck, and getting progressively shorter as they move back along the body. That row of extended bone is the actual framework of the hump. It is architecture, not padding. But bone alone does not make a shape like that. Those tall processes exist for a reason, and the reason is leverage. They act as anchor points, and attached to them is an extremely powerful mass of shoulder and neck musculature. Think of a mast on a ship with the rigging pulling on it. The taller the mast, the more leverage the ropes have. Those elongated bones give the neck and shoulder muscles a much longer lever arm, which means those muscles can generate far more force for the same amount of effort. And a bison needs that force because it is carrying an absolutely massive head. Every time that animal lifts its head, swings it sideways, drives it forward into a rival, or pushes through resistance, that entire load is being managed by the muscles anchored to the hump. The front end of a bison is essentially a purpose-built machine for moving a heavy head and a heavy chest with power. Now compare that to a buffalo. In a buffalo, those chest vertebrae are not dramatically elongated. There is no tall, bony scaffold behind the neck, and there is no giant muscular tower built on top of it. The result is a top line that reads as much more level. There may be a slight rise over the shoulders, because any large grazing animal carries some muscle there, but it is a gentle swell, not a mountain. If you drew a straight line from the base of the neck to the base of the tail on a buffalo, that line would sit fairly close to the animal's actual back. Do the same thing on a bison, and the line would leave a huge gap, because the shoulders climb far above it. That gap is the whole story. The second clue is the fur, and this one is useful because it works at a distance where you cannot make out any anatomical detail. A bison wears what looks like a heavy coat thrown over only the front half of its body. The head, the neck, the shoulders, and the front legs are covered in dense, shaggy, woolly hair. On the head it forms a thick mop that hangs down over the forehead and around the face. On the neck and shoulders it forms a deep mane that adds even more visual bulk to a hump that is already the largest thing on the animal. Many bison also carry a beard hanging beneath the chin and long fringes of hair down the front legs, almost like the animal is wearing shaggy trousers on the front pair only. Then, somewhere around the middle of the body, something remarkable happens. The coat simply stops. The hair on the rear half of the body is dramatically shorter, smoother, and lighter. The transition is so abrupt that the animal genuinely looks like it is half wearing a winter coat and half not. That dividing line is one of the fastest identification tools you have, because you can see it in silhouette from far away, and no buffalo has anything like it. On a buffalo, the coat is short and relatively even across the entire body. An African buffalo has a sparse, coarse, dark hide with no woolly mane, no beard, and no heavy front end covering. A water buffalo has thin hair over gray or blackish skin, often smeared with dried mud, again with no dramatic front-to-back difference. The front of a buffalo is simply not clothed the way the front of a bison is. One honest note here, because accuracy matters. The bison's coat is seasonal. It grows out enormously through autumn and winter, and then in spring the animal sheds it in ragged, peeling patches that make it look like it is falling apart. In late spring, a shedding bison can look startlingly slim and scruffy. So use the fur as a strong supporting clue, but always check it against the shape of the shoulders, because the bones do not change with the seasons. Now let us talk about horns, and here the picture gets more interesting, because horns are the feature people reach for first, and they are actually the least reliable of the three. Start with the African buffalo, because its horns are unmistakable. They are enormously heavy, and in a mature bull, the bases of the two horns thicken, widen, and fuse together across the top of the skull into a single, solid plate of bone. That plate is called the boss, and it turns the animal's forehead into a helmet. From that fused base, the horns sweep outward and downward, then curve back up into sharp hooks. When you see that wide, bony shield across the brow, you are looking at an African buffalo and nothing else. The water buffalo is built differently. Its horns are often extremely long, sweeping out sideways from the head in wide crescents, sometimes curving backward and inward at the tips. In some wild individuals, the span between the tips is genuinely enormous, among the widest of any living animal. But crucially, the bases do not fuse into a solid helmet across the forehead. They sit as two separate horns on either side of the skull. So the silhouette of a water buffalo head is wide and open and sweeping, while the silhouette of an African buffalo head is heavy, compact, and armored. And the bison. The bison has, comparatively speaking, small horns. They are short, thick at the base, and they curve upward and slightly inward, ending in points that rise no higher than the top of that enormous, shaggy head. Because the head is buried in so much dense hair, the horns often barely register at all from a distance. If you look at an animal and think that the horns seem almost like an afterthought compared to the rest of the head, that is a bison. Here is the warning, though. Horns change. They change with age, they change between males and females, and they get chipped, worn, broken, and blunted over a lifetime of fighting and pushing. A young African buffalo has not yet grown its boss. A domestic water buffalo may have horns that look nothing like a wild one. So use the horns to confirm what you already suspect, not to make the call on their own. Which brings us to the method that actually works, and it is beautifully simple. Do not look at one horn. Do not look at the color of the coat, because both bison and buffalo range across browns, blacks, and grays depending on light, mud, season, and age. Instead, look at the entire outline of the animal all at once. Ask yourself one question. Where is the highest point of this animal's back? If the highest point is above the front legs, and the body slopes down from there toward the tail, and the front half looks heavier and shaggier than the back half, you are looking at a bison. If the top line is broadly level, if the head and the hips sit in a similar relationship without a towering shoulder mass between them, and if the coat is short and even across the whole body, you are looking at a buffalo. And then the shape of the horns will tell you which kind. 2 extra details will make you sound like you actually know what you're talking about. First, the word buffalo. Early settlers in North America applied it to bison, and it stuck so firmly that entire cities, sports teams, and songs carry the name. It is a linguistic accident, not a biological fact. True buffalo are the African and Asian species. Second, there are 2 kinds of bison. The American bison of the plains and forests, and the European bison, also known as the weasant, which survives in the forests of Eastern Europe. The weasant carries a somewhat lower, less dramatic hump and holds its head higher, so it looks a little more like a forest ox and a little less like a rolling brown boulder. Same family, slightly different architecture. So let us bring it all together in order of reliability. First, the shoulders, because a bison's hump is built from elongated spinal bone and enormous anchored muscle, and buffalo simply do not have that structure. Second, the coat, because a bison wears a heavy, woolly front half and a short, smooth back half with a visible dividing line, while a buffalo is covered evenly and thinly. And third, the horns, which separate the buffalo species from each other, with the fused, bony boss of the African buffalo on one side and the long, sweeping crescents of the water buffalo on the other. Learn those 3 in that order, and you will never be fooled again, no matter how bad the photograph is. Ladies and gentlemen, right now on your screen there are 3 links. On the left is our newest video. In the center is a square link to our channel, and on the right is a whole playlist of stories just as interesting as this one. Give this video a like, share your opinion in the comments, and then go watch the rest of our videos. Thank you.